session is art of breaking habits. It is basically the flip side of what we have studied in making habits. So some of these concepts I won't repeat again. The concepts are essentially the same. In fact, when I was writing the summary of this chapter, I saw very high level of similarity between what we have just discussed. So some of it we'll skip. Alrighty, so this is our habit loop. Now, if I basically go on my mobile, whenever I see it, it's a cue that I see a mobile. Routine, I immediately spend 30 hours or 40 minutes, or 30 minutes or 40 minutes on the Facebook. That's my routine. And the reward is I feel happy, but temporarily. But I know it is something bad for me. Or for example, smokers. You feel good after you have a smoke, but you know it's not good for you. So when you take that step back, you know what has happened is not good. But you still get that temporary reward. So what can we do to break those things? So there are some steps which I have mentioned here. Avoid the cues. Avoid the cues. Sometimes there's a particular situation in which we do a particular habit, we can try to avoid those cues. Do not expose yourself to those cues. And then you would be able to break that whole habit loop. The second thing is replace a routine that follows a cue with a good one. There's a cue. When you always receive that, you do something, and you can replace that and do something better. Third thing is change the reward. Once you get the routine, immediately have that feeling of guilt, okay, and repent. For Muslims, when you have that feeling of guilt rather than reward, the habit would likely break, okay. And then break the craving, and we will discuss there are some ways in which we can break the craving. And the last one is that block the means that lead to routines. It's a very beautiful concept. Block the means, like the mean is that you would have a pack of cigarette and then you would smoke it. Now block the means, don't have that packet with you. Or for example, if you are able to do bad things on computer at some point in Q is late now, you don't have kids, so we can talk a bit more freely. So some people have got addiction to pornography, for example. When does that happen? When you are alone. Always happens when you are alone. All right. So that's the cue. You are alone. Okay. And then there would be a routine, and routine would need certain enablers. So now, how can you block those enablers? Put filters on your computer and forget the password. Install a software, block those websites and forget the password, and it would always be there. Or remove that reward. Always had that feeling of guilt whenever that bad thing has happened. Isolate the cues. Never be alone. Always be someone. There's a hadith which says that it is better to be in a good company than being alone. So change the cue, or change the routine, or change the reward, or break these. So this is what we can do to basically break any habit. Okay. Yeah. All right. So now this is a very beautiful concept. We just studied blocking the means. Now another person that I deeply love, and that person is Imam Malik. So he gave this concept of Sadud Daraya. Daraya means what we call in Urdu Zarai, or means, and Sad means to stop the means. Even there are some halal things which we should not do in order to prevent some haram things. This is an Islamic concept. So all this what we are studying, it's not new. It is what our scholars have told us centuries ago. Even when we get stick to our religion, all these things would get very clear. So this concept is a 1400 years old concept, Sadud Daraya, block the means. So basically this terminology is used in the studies of fiqh. Basically, if something bad, something haram, something leads to something haram, this halal thing should also be not done. If you are selling your grapes to a winemaker, selling grapes is halal, but that leads to something haram, so it's ideal that you should break that. Don't do that. So that is what the concept of Sadud Daraya means. And we will now study its example in the present day. All right, this concept of Sadud Daraya in the present day. Should we move on? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So this is the story. So the author of our book that we are discussing is basically a journalist. So he did have an opportunity to serve sometime in Iraq during that Iraq war. So what used to happen is that he used to see a lot of riots or riots in the city of Kufa, right? And how it used to happen is that people used to gather somewhere, a gathering, then someone would disrupt something, and then people would be all over the streets, and they would be like very angry mob. So this used to happen. So there was a mayor in Iraq. So the author discussed with him that what is the case, like how can we stop these people from doing these riots. So the guy said that don't let the kebab makers in. Don't let the kebab makers in. So what used to happen is that they had a set routine. So now what they are trying to do is to break some component or all of that routine. People used to get here, they used to spend 7-8 hours. As soon as they used to gather in, some hawkers used to get in with their stalls, like selling chips and selling kebabs and those sort of things. And they used to eat, they would get energy, and they would keep doing what they are doing. So they stopped all the kebab makers. And what happened? People used to wait where the kebab guys are. And they used to feel hungry, and gradually they started to leave. And in a few hours, the whole thing was gone. So the story is not very good for us. We know that they were gathering for the right cause to protect their own homeland. But the way in which they broke that habit is something which we can use in other situations. So they removed a part of their routine. So they removed that component of the routine, and the routine got destroyed. So that tells us a story that if we want to break some routine, we have to stop the means. That was stopping the means. Is that clear? Yeah.
Same happen if you know that war is going on, if you cut the supply for the so that they can the means to get power.
That's right, yeah. Exactly. So it's a very good example. So we can break the habit if we cut its means. So what they have done in that case, we discussed these 4 things in the beginning, that we can use those things to break a habit. In this case, what they have done, replaced, modify or interrupted a routine that follows the queue. So the queue was gathering, so they have interrupted that thing. Another story. So this story was of a girl whose name was Mandy. And she used to come to a doctor. She was a chronic nail biter. Sometimes even blood used to come out of her fingers. She used to always bit her nails that much. So that was the case with her. What were her cues? So her cues were that whenever she was little excited about something, or little nervous about something, or little tensed about something, she would start biting her nails. So what doctor did, she asked her to make some index cards. Every time she get a feeling of tingling or some cue, she should make a cue. She should write that cue. That I have now, this thing has happened, and that is why now I feel like biting my nails. She should write it down. Okay. And then she also suggested her alternate routines. Whenever she would think like biting her nails, she should do something else. Maybe knock on the table or something. Do something else, which is physically enticing. Okay. So that's what they did. And what happened? She used to get that reward, a feeling of accomplishment when she used to bite her nails. Doctor asked her to write down that what do you feel after you bite your nails. She said, I feel a sense of achievement that I have done something. Though it was a false sense of achievement, after biting her nails, there was no achievement. But she used to feel that way. So doctor gave her a different routine. Knock the table or like do the knuckles, etc. And then you would have the same reward. She would again feel satisfied. So this thing did work. The morale of this experiment is that we can have index card. Whatever habit we want to change, keep a card with you or GK book, what we studied in the time management. So have that GK book handy with you and write down that I feel like doing that bad routine now because of this thing. This is my cue. So identify your cues.
But if she is very involved, very engaged in that habit, is she able to recognize that what I am doing?
Yes. Initially she was not.
She will have to do it for a while.
Yeah.
Then only if you recognize yourself, it's not easy. You have to be very careful.
So initially she was not able to.
Being aware is very difficult. Awareness, being aware is the problem.
Yes, that's correct.
I is the problem.
That's correct.
I crunch my teeth. In that.
Correct.
I crunch my teeth. All my teeth are like that kind of thing. All the time. At night, every time when I'm a little bit tense or I'm thinking I'm watching a movie. Okay. So it's very difficult.
It
to
is
stop.
difficult.
I am not able to stop as yet.
Yes. So
I
what?
was in the middle. I forgot it because my wife used to. You're doing this.
So she used to
And
break
she was
break
like,
that routine.
Break that routine. So I was able to stop it, but now I've started.
You need
again.
support.
That's right. So that was the support environment that he was getting, and he was.
I was able to break it, but now I've started.
Yeah.
again.
So in her
Not
case,
after she went, but
in her experiment, what happened was that initially, as Sabir mentioned, she was not able to recognize that what are the cues, what are the rewards. She did not have an answer. But doctor asked her to be conscious, more conscious. Write down exactly what is the time when you do that, and whenever like it requires a little bit of willpower. When you are feeling like doing that thing, use your willpower and do something else instead. So doctor, initially she had to practice it with doctor. Doctor knew that he's establishing a new habit loop. So many a time she did it with doctor. Doctor, now I feel like biting my, okay, do this thing. So under the supervision, she did it for quite some time. Doctor established a route in her brain, and then she was given cards and she used to do it alone. As Muslims, I just inserted this thing in. If some of us feel like doing some of these things, we have got a physical thing that we can do, and it may help us. Rather than knuckling on the wall or doing something, we can do something positive as Muslims. So this was Mandy's story. This was another experiment in which doctors identified two things. One, keep a log, note down the cues, and then have some willpower. Practice it under supervision. If you are under supervision, you are being observed, you are being guided, you have that support environment, the habit would get firm. And once it gets firm, then you can practice it your own. Yeah? Alrighty.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's also an art actually. I mean,
Yeah.
to mentor someone in that. Because,
Correct.
I mean, my younger daughter, I mean, when she was born,
Yeah.
she had these two fingers in her mouth.
Alrighty.
And still she's 6, but she still take that. And we tried our best,
Yeah.
but we were unable to do that.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes
I'm
you
not sure
you
what
have
the
to apply
alternative.
something on her fingers.
Yeah, we have applied that as well. We have applied aloe vera, but it's very bitter, but still
She used to do same as well. She used to apply aloe vera, not aloe vera, but some.
I'm not sure what needs to be done in order to break that because we don't know what's the alternative. We always say that don't do it, and but when she knows, she do it.
Yeah, so her case was the same. Like telling her not to do that would not help.
Yeah.
And also, like she used to put something on finger, it did not help.
It requires an art to mentor. Actually.
That's right. So you would have to spend time with her, and then every time maybe she's too young, but maybe identify the cues. What exactly is the thing when she does that, and change it with some like other routine.
You have to hold her hand for a
We
while.
taped her as well. What some of it, I think we don't have that skills.
Yeah.
That's why she went to doctor, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I've got a daughter as well, Mashallah.
Yeah,
She's 4
yeah.
years old.
Uh-huh.
But let me tell you one thing. That's called being a woman. They don't change their habits. From the day one, they're so
She also
persistent.
No, no,
If you put something on a boy's like finger, you probably will stop like doing it. But that's called
I have
being
a
a woman.
picture of it. She was
My
just
daughter
2 months and
was
she
also-
had these two fingers, right, of
That's
left
right.
hand.
Yeah,
in
That's
her
my
mouth.
daughter.
And still, how do you do that?
It may be like now these days they are behavioral scientists, so maybe you can take her and then they can.
Exactly. I mean,
they
this is
can
good
help.
experience.
That's right.
My youngest daughter, she used to do that. These two
These
centimeters.
two fingers, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
From the birth, you can
From-
say.
exactly,
Maybe
yeah.
from the second or third day.
Exactly,
she started
yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
But what we did, we wrap a handkerchief on her hand, so put all the fingers together. So she didn't have actually
The mouth was not big enough.
not
to-
big enough to put her hand.
All the
in her
fingers
mouth.
in the mouth.
So that stopped.
So you interrupted the
It
routine.
took
Be careful, you
almost
need to
maybe
look at-
month or two, but
Okay.
she stopped.
I think she
At
does it when
what
she's
age?
sleeping.
At what age?
She's not two, but she
Yeah. I
doesn't
mean,
do
I mean,
that.
we haven't done it. We taped
She's
her, but
big
still
now.
she's taking
6 years old, right?
But,
But
at
a
night,
big thing.
you are right.
Six
At
months.
night, actually, she wants unintentionally she have this, and then she goes to
She
sleep.
sleeps and then, but you have to be careful at night. You have to wake up and it's your duty. You'll have to do it because we did that.
6 years now,
6 years.
and he's right.
And it's a very developed
She was
habit
born.
now.
She has these two fingers.
It's
now.
very developed. It's very difficult.
Yeah, it's so hardwired that you would need such a hard effort to remove
Yeah.
it now.
You have to do hard
And
effort.
that was surprised why center two fingers.
Yes,
not,
only these
not
left
thumb,
fingers, yeah,
not
exactly.
this
Center two
one,
fingers,
center
yes.
two fingers.
Yeah.
I did two or this one. I don't remember.
So what we have just discussed.
And we did the same
Yeah,
actually for
yeah,
our son. He's
yeah.
addicted for
And there's more
tablet.
fear than this example actually,
Yeah.
because it's just nail biting, and she is doing it since the day she was born.
Fingers would have had those teeth marks as well. Right?
But at night she do that when she sleeps, she put it out. But the thing is that the germs here.
Does she fight them?
No.
My son.
Just
no,
subtly,
used to
yes.
fight it.
Like my son, he got addicted for tablet, all the time.
Yeah.
For
That is-
it's fully charged. He will
Yeah.
not let you to take from him,
Yeah.
because- so what my wife she did, she charged it 40% or 30%,
Okay.
So once it's finished, he throw it.
Yeah.
But he don't useful for him,
That's right,
So
yeah.
step by step. Now he don't take it because he said it's his stupid thing.
Yeah.
After some time, it
That's
got
right.
discharged, you know.
That's right.
So I think we have to learn this art actually.
Yeah, that's right. And I think they're very.
And you have to try different things.
Breaking the
You have to
habit.
try different things as well, not just one cue.
So what Farooq bhai did is that the cue was there that she wanted to have those fingers in her mouth,
Yeah.
but he disrupted the routine. He put a barrier in here, or he blocked the means. Sadhu daraya. He did that, and now the means were blocked. The routine was destroyed, and the habit was destroyed. Yeah. In Mohsin bhai's case, what was done? The cue was there. The routine did happen as well, but the reward was very short term. So he broke that he could not do that. Or it could be the routine was disturbed as well, that he could not complete that routine.
Routine is disturbed.
The routine is disturbed. So all these things basically tie down to these things and these concepts. I think they are very valuable concepts.
Agreed.
Yeah. So Mandy's story we have just discussed. Now this is a story of snacking at work. Many people have got habit of snacking, not sneaking at work.
See, yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes we snack at work very often, and but it is not usually hunger that drives us to go to cafe. Sometimes we need a little break. We are too tired. We need a break, and it is that break that we are looking for. Sometimes it is just the socialization bit. Like I see in our cafe, like and that woman thing, they talk so much, that he said, yeah, I just need a cup of tea and that's it. Yeah. Yeah. So we can interrupt that routine. Yeah. So basically, what scientists studied was that they asked people that write down on your cards that what is that cue which takes us to the cafe, and some of them identified that it's not the hunger. I'm not feeling hungry at that time. It is the need for socialization, or I just want to have that little break from the work. I need to have a little walk. So they replaced it. They said, okay, rather than going to the cafe, go to a colleague, spend 10 minutes with them, just talk about random things, and then come back. And they had the same reward, same level of satisfaction. So this is something which is very practical, and we can see numerous examples of it. Smoking, some people have replaced that by caffeine. Caffeine itself is not very encouraged, but maybe as an intermediate step, it may be good. Better than smoking. And then later on you can replace it with tea, and then you can replace it with some healthy drink. Go gradual, but you can still achieve things. Yeah. Alrighty, so we discussed the story of, he's basically a motivational trainer in Pakistan. So we discussed his story. Does anyone remember? What does he used to do when he was angry?
Boxing. He had a boxing at his office.
punch bag at the
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah.
And he used to punch on that.
That's
bag
right.
Whenever he got angry.
So whenever he received the cue that he's unhappy with something or he's angry with something, rather than going and fighting with people, which is a bad habit, rather than fighting with people, he changed that routine. His routine was now this bag. Whenever he's angry, he is just fighting with that bag. And then that routine was replaced with some other routine, and then he used to get that same feeling. Adrenaline in the body was back to normal once he had finished his fighting. So this is what he used to do. The message that he was trying to give is that when we are angry, when we are not happy with something, we have got a lot of energy in our body. So the message he wanted to give was that channelize that energy into something meaningful. Have a vision in life. Use that anger, unhappiness, sadness, overjoy to help you achieve that vision. All right. So channelizing the energy is very important, and that's what we can do when we form our habits in a way that can channelize our energy. What do these billboards do? They serve as a cue and encourage us to perform a routine. What does Islam, and now most of the days we see that these billboards have got like a stuff which we cannot put in a presentation. So I searched for billboards, and all of those were, so many of those were such bad that I could not put them in here in the presentation. So I chose this blank one. So they are so bad sometimes, which triggers us to do bad things. Many of them are, for example, related to makeup industry or cosmetics industry or pornography industry or those industries which are not very beneficial. So what does Islam tell us about this? This is a cue. What does Islam says? Islam says this. Fahmi, can you kindly read this one?
Say to the believing men that they should lower their gaze and guard their modesty. That will make for greater purity for them. And Allah is well acquainted with all that they do.
So what are we doing by lowering our gaze? We are isolating the cue. The cue is there, but we are not exposing ourselves to that. All right. So as I mentioned, these concepts are very Islamic concepts. So we are just breaking that queue. We are not looking at the queue. All right. Now there's a beautiful story. Time for some videos.
It was narrated that a man who used to sin a lot came to the wise and righteous man Ibrahim ibn Adham. He was from the early Muslims. So he tells him, give me advice because I always sin. So Ibrahim ibn Adham then, rahimahullah, he's trying to shame him out of sinning in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, if you want to sin against Allah, then go ahead and do so. Just don't eat or drink. Don't eat from Allah's food. And don't drink from the drink that He provides for you. Don't use His provision. So the man said, how can I do that when everything is provided from Allah? He said, does it make sense to sin against Allah while you're eating His food? The man says, you're right. Give me the second piece of advice. He said, if you insist on sinning against Allah while eating His food and drinking from His drink, then at least don't sin against Him on His land. The man said, that is bigger than the first one, when all the land belongs to Allah. He tells him, is it proper then that you sin against Allah while you eat His food and you do it on His land? He says, give me the third piece of advice. He said, the third piece of advice is if you're going to insist upon doing all that, then at least sin where He can't see you. And the man says, this is even greater. He says, does it make sense that you sin against Allah on His land while eating from His food that He provides and you do it right in front of Him? So the man says, give me the fourth piece of advice. He said, if you still insist upon sinning after all this, then continue sinning, but when the angel of death comes to take you, tell them to wait for you until you make 2 rak'at and you repent to Allah Azza wa Jal. He said, the angel won't allow me. He said, then when they're commanded to throw you into the hellfire, then refuse to go with them. And he says, they won't allow me. He said, then after that the man said, qat, yani enough. He had gotten his advice, he had understood the admonition, and it was said that from that day the man went on without sinning against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So what does this story tell us? What did Imam Ibrahim broke from the habit loop? What did he do? So the man was still receiving the cues. He did wanted to do bad things. But what he did is that he changed his perception of the cue. So he put a barrier between cue and the routine. Person had the cue, person had the ability to do the bad thing, but he put a barrier in between. That thinking, that perception about the cue. Whenever he would see the cue, rather than doing that act, these things would come into his mind. That, oh, I'm on Allah's land, I'm eating His food, He can see me, why should I do that? So that is another way of breaking the habits, of changing the perception of the cue. It helps us in a lot of things. Alright, another story.
Talk about overcoming temptations. So we talked about your heart being filled with the love of Allah Azza wa Jal, this bond with Allah Azza wa Jal, or also with people, and that how it helps get rid of addictions. Let me give you an interesting way of getting rid of temptations or not acting upon temptations. This is a true story. This is a sheikh, an Arabic sheikh that I happened upon for the qadr of Allah, maybe so I can share it with people. And this sheikh solves every problem you present him with 2 rak'at. Every problem you present him, he solves it with 2 rak'at. So, and I heard him explaining this. He says, a guy came to me, he said, Ya Sheikh, I look at women a lot. One of those guys. He's always peeking at women. I call those brothers at their peak performance. Yeah? So he's peeking all the time and everything. He says, Sheikh, help me. I look at women too much. The Sheikh said, it's really simple, but you have to commit to this. Every time you look at a woman, and I don't mean accidental look or like, you just business dealing look where there's no desire involved, but like look. He said, every time you look at a woman, pray 2 rak'at. Any time of the day, you look at a woman, the way that's improper, go pray 2 rak'at. See what's happening now. What's the formula? Why does this work? What is the bigger deal for Iblis? Does Iblis love that you look at a woman? more so than he hates that you pray 2 rak'at to Allah? He hates that you pray 2 rak'at to Allah more than his love that you disobey by looking at a woman. True? So he said, every time you pray 2 rak'at, you look at a woman, pray 2 rak'at. The guy said, I'm a kind of a receptionist. A lot of women. He said, just pray 2 rak'at. The guy said, the first day I prayed like 5 times, 10 rak'at. The next day I prayed 8 rak'at. After that 6 rak'at, then 4, then 2. Then he said, after that, before I even look, if I hear a woman coming, like I hear her voice, she's on the phone, or I hear her high heels, tuck, 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 like that, the shaitan will tell me, don't look. If you look, you have to pray 2 rak'at, and just don't look. And he called the Shaykh and said, Shaykh, I don't look at all now. Shaykh said, another guy came with a similar problem. He said, Shaykh, I smoke. And you know the smokers. Make dua. The dua of cigarettes, right? They make dua. Shaykh said, let me tell you something. Every time you smoke a cigarette, make fresh wudu. Even if you have wudu, make fresh wudu and pray 2 rak'at. The guy said, Shaykh, I smoke 2 packs a day. He said, make fresh wudu and pray 2 rak'at. And you know how smokers quit, right? This guy said, the first day, I prayed 10 rak'at. That means he smoked 5 cigarettes. He went from 2 packs to 5 cigarettes in the first day. He make fresh wudu and prayed 2 rak'at. He said then, the second day, notice the second day only, I prayed 4 times, 8 rak'at. And then the third day, 3. The fourth day, 2. The fifth day, just 1 cigarette. He prayed 2 rak'at. He said after that, every time I want to smoke a cigarette, or I think maybe I should smoke a cigarette, shaitan will come to me and say, if you smoke, now you have to make wudu all over again and get wet and pray 2 rak'at. Just leave the cigarette. So the Shaykh then wrote about the 2 rak'at solution in his book. He said, then a young man read the book and he called me. He said, Shaykh, I read about your 2 rak'at solution and I used to miss Fajr and it would make me so angry to miss Fajr. He said, one day at night, I sat up in my bed, just alone. There's nobody in my room, just like a madman. I sat up in my bed and I said out loud, Wallahi al-Azim, if I miss Fajr tomorrow, I will pray 100 rak'at. He'll pray 50 times extra salah. He said, Fajr came, no alarm clock, nothing. Iblis said, get up quickly, it's Fajr time. He said, for 1 year, I never missed Fajr. And I would show up before the mu'adhin even at the masjid. And then they realized that and they gave me the keys to the masjid and now I'm the one who opens up the masjid for Fajr. And I really love this idea of the 2 rak'at. The only way it will work though is if you commit to it. And I wanted to share it with you because you might use it for whatever. Maybe one of us in here has an anger problem. Every time I lose my temper, I'm going to make fresh wudu and pray 2 rak'at. And the Prophet ﷺ said, when you lose your temper, the shaitan moves you around wherever he wants to take you. Just like the Prophet ﷺ likened it to how you move a donkey around. You just take the reins and you steer the donkey anywhere, the donkey just goes with you. The shaitan will make you do things you would never do when you're angry. When you're angry, he makes you do things you would never do otherwise. He steers you like that. So maybe now I want to break this hold of the shaitan on me. And every time I lose my temper, I make wudu and I pray 2 rak'at. After that, the shaitan would not want you to lose your temper. You're about to get upset, he'll tell you, calm down, brother, calm down. No need for 2 rak'at right now. Maybe every one of us has something different, some different temptation we want to pull away from. Be dedicated and try the 2 rak'at system. Give it a shot, give it a try. But you have to be dedicated to it. Because the shaitan's with you the whole time. And if he sees that sometimes you do it and then you're just bluffing the other times, oh, okay, this guy's not serious. But if you're serious, he doesn't want you to make 2 more rak'at. And he'll stop trying to entice you.